My name is Marie Ashway. I'm with Mainline and happy to be here helping out today with delivering this panel discussion about application modernization and automation. We've got our friends from IBM as well as Joe Guthart here from Mainline, Christina Perez, who is helping me with this as well. So let me turn this over to Joe Guthart, who is going to moderate this for us. And by form of introduction, Joe is a software specialist here at Mainline and does a lot of focus on a WebSphere and automation and other such IBM software solutions. So Joe, I'm going to pass this over to you.
Okay, great, Marie. Thank you. Again, I'm Joe Goodhart. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day. We know it's busy. It's always very difficult to take time off, so thank you. We think you'll find this beneficial. As you've heard before, we've got two of our IBM friends here who are going to help us with this. We've got Jeff Puri, who's out of the UK, lives in no man's land, I just found out. And he's the program director and program management for IBM Automation. He's going to be our WebSphere expert today. We also have Chris Marvin with us. He's going to be talking about IBM's new acquisition of Aspera and how it relates with WebSphere. He handles AI ops and integration sales for IBM, and he's out of the DC area. But before we get going, just quickly is Mainline at a glance. To give you an idea, Mainline's been around for a long time. We are a business and IT solution provider, been founded in 1989, headquarters in Tallahassee. We cover the entire United States. We've got over 400 employees, probably actually I've heard about 1,200 product and technical certifications recently. A variety of technologies for your IT and business solution centers, and relationships with pretty much all of the top vendors that you would expect. We have a long time relationship and do a great majority of our business with our friends from IBM who are here. And we've grown through the years and we're now over $1 billion in revenue. So that's just a quick showing of Mainline and our people who are going to help us out in this discussion here. If you will, this is going to be a panel format. So again, with our two experts here, most of you customers who are online right now, you're here and most of you are WebSphere customers. So most of you are running WebSphere, or you may be interested in running WebSphere. We're going to talk about WebSphere Hybrid Edition. A lot of people have heard about this. There's been blogs all over the place about this. And we're going to look at customers looking for a way to modernize their apps, their WebSphere apps. And it's going to include things like containerization, Kubernetes, and some discussion around that. We're also going to talk about WebSphere automation and how you can modernize and secure your estate and optimize your WebSphere operations. And then thirdly, again, we're going to switch over and we're going to kind of discuss and talk about Instana, which is a new acquisition which will help automate your applications and monitor them and help you to optimize it. So again, as Marie said, you're on mute right now. If you have any questions, please use the chat window. We'll look at questions as they come in, and then we'll have some time at the end as well, about 15 minutes to go through and ask some questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into questions right away, and we're going to call on Jeff here to talk about WebSphere Hybrid Edition. And Jeff, welcome. Again, thank you for joining us from the UK. We know it's hard for you to get here a lot of times, even virtually. So thank you for joining us. If you could just kind of to kick things off, tell us about some of the common challenges that you see that are facing our WebSphere customers today. And, knowing that most of these customers that are online right now have WebSphere, or many of them are even thinking about moving to WebSphere.
Sure, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me today. So, I mean, I guess partly the range of problems that we see our customers dealing with is quite broad. WebSphere has a huge customer base and been around for a long time, as everyone knows. So, but there are probably a common set of 2 or 3 that regularly crop up, and they typically there's an obvious one. The first one is obvious, which is cost, right? People are always thinking about how best to manage and optimize around their costs, and so one of the things we can talk about in a moment is how we can help with that through Hybrid Edition. A second one that kind of comes about, I guess, as a result of the fact that WebSphere has been around for a long time, is complexity. So as an organization grows and evolves over time, it typically, maybe there's some mergers and acquisitions that occur. Maybe there's just, business units that get formed, and over time, the complexity of a WebSphere estate just goes up. So dealing with complexity is a common one. And then the one that you mentioned sort of in the introduction is the modernization, right? So as the world is evolving and continues to, head towards sort of more hybrid cloud deployment topologies, there's a whole set of questions about what do I do with my existing application portfolio? How do I understand what I've got there? How do I optimize it and then transform it progressively to become more cloud native? So there's a whole host of questions that we get around modernization. And so those are the kind of the key things. I mean, if I may, just focus in on cost for a second. So we have a slide a bit later where we talk about some of the flexibility of the license, but we're very conscious with WebSphere that our customer base has grown with us, that the way that apps are built these days has changed, and that some of the sort of traditional approach to building and deploying and managing applications has been evolving and evolved to be replaced now by things like Kubernetes. So we have a large customer base that are very dependent on the traditional WebSphere application server and some of the network deployment capabilities, and they come at a cost. So one of the things that we've done with Hybrid Edition is look carefully at how we can build in sort of license flexibility. So when you look at the Hybrid Edition bundle, you have access to all the different editions of WebSphere. And there's this thing called a ratio table that allows you to kind of trade in some of your existing core entitlements and redeploy it as a less expensive version of WebSphere. So you can maybe trade in some of the network deployment TWAS-ND cores that you're using and redeploy those at a better ratio with WebSphere Base or Liberty. So one of the things about managing cost is making sure you kind of right size your deployment to use the most appropriate runtime for the job. And the easiest way to do that rebalancing is to adopt Hybrid Edition, because all of the licenses are included in the bundle. And then it's just a case of which one do you need. So that's what, one of the big ones that people often asked about is how do I manage my costs?
Okay.
So the other thing that we were talking about was modernization, which we'll come on to. But I think the other thing to think about is complexity. Right?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. You've probably seen right now, you've got a quick poll, audience poll on the screen, and it says, have you started to modernize your existing WebSphere apps? And if you could select any one of those, and this is for attendees only, this will kind of give us an idea of which way we should send this discussion. So hopefully everybody is putting in their votes right now.
Yeah, so it's Marie. So thanks. So we've got about half of you who have weighed in, and if there are any others that want take the next couple of seconds here and let us know what's going on in your neck of the woods, that would be great. All right, thank you. So it looks like we've got most of you, about 56% of you, are saying no, not yet. And the remainder are kind of split between, yes, we're moving to Liberty, or we're rewriting using alternatives, not Liberty. And some of you are saying you're not sure, which is fine. So thanks.
Yeah, that's a pretty common response that we see when we talk to our customers. Again, most people are like, where do I start? Or they may have already started and they're just early in the process. So Jeff, I mean, tell us, I mean, what is the best place for any of these people to start the modernization journey here, as it's very complicated, or at least it appears to be complicated?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fair to say that it is complicated, but that's part of the reason that we, put together a set of tools in Hybrid Edition to help with some of that. Where do you begin? How do you understand what can be modernized? In fact, we have a slide, right, which sort of talks about three primary characteristics or three elements that are the foundation of modernization. So, I mean, it's laid out in columns and rows on this table, right? And in the columns, you can see there are 3 columns. There's modernization of operations, modernization of the runtime itself, and modernization of the application architecture. So those are 3 kind of approaches that people can take. And it's laid out in a kind of left to right progressive form here. But in reality, you can kind of start anywhere, right? So it depends a little bit on the nature of your apps. Some of the apps are really easy. There may be a basic web app. You can kind of almost lift and shift those across from traditional WebSphere to Liberty, put them into a container and deploy them onto Kubernetes, no problem. Some of the other apps, that once you get into something that's a bit more complex and you start to bring in some of the, maybe the integration, the MQ stuff, maybe some data, the complexity of what you're dealing with goes up. So there's a step in the middle here around modernizing the runtime, where we like to use the modernization tools that we provide, Transformation Advisor being the key one, to first of all understand the application estate as it is today, give an assessment of the things that are easy to move, those web apps that I talked about, and then look at some of the things that are in the moderate and to more difficult category. And then there's a business value assessment that needs to happen, right? Some apps don't need to be modernized yet. There's maybe they're okay where they are, they can stay where they are. And in fact, the Hybrid Edition license lets you just keep running things where they are today. But there's a set that you'll be able to see that suit modernization. They represent good business value. Maybe there are some constraints like the rate at which you can update those apps is slowing. If you could move them to something maybe more microservice oriented or container based, then you can pick up on some of the modern CI/CD development tools. And so modernizing the runtime, adopting Liberty is something that Transformation Advisor can do and help with. And it makes recommendations. It demonstrates to you kind of a high-level cost structure of what it's going to cost to make that transformation. And it can even build some of the assets, like some of the container images, some of the server configuration, all that kind of stuff kind of automatically gets generated. So that's one of the tools, Transformation Advisor. That's a really good place to start, great place to do an inventory of your apps and then begin that modernization process. If you're in the category where you're looking at microservices, then Mono to Micro is a more recently added tool to our portfolio. And that, as the name suggests, that's about understanding existing monolithic applications and how you can break those down into a set of microservices. And that's really about exploiting the extreme end of the kind of cloud native agile delivery model, right? Where instead of having a large application that you have to deploy in one go, you get the discrete microservices and they each have their own life cycle. So the thing that needs to change regularly can be updated frequently. The other things maybe just sit there stable and keep running. So Mono to Micro is about understanding those big existing applications, finding, we call them seams. Where are the natural seams in an application that you can kind of split pieces apart and turn them into discrete microservices? So Mono to Micro is one of the tools we have to help with that. And underpinning all this obviously is the IBM Lab Services, which help take that and turn it into something that's sort of repeatable, go through the proof of concept, get into a state where you understand the value the tools can bring and deliver that as a repeatable sort of project that you can then run for yourself. So yeah, our tools embedded inside the Hybrid Edition package.
Okay, great, thank you. Red Hat OpenShift, everybody's heard that IBM bought Red Hat, and OpenShift seems to be IBM's strategic Kubernetes platform. And there was some confusion initially with some earlier releases of IBM Cloud Pak for applications, and then Hybrid Edition came out. So if you could talk a little bit about Hybrid Edition and how it can help an enterprise if they're not really ready to embrace OpenShift quite yet.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you're right. There was a period of time where we had Cloud Pak for applications and that embedded OpenShift as part of the package. That, the reality is that a lot of our customers are already adopting OpenShift directly with Red Hat, and it just served to confuse things. So what we've done with Hybrid Edition is take the platform out, recognize that Red Hat is the best place to get the platform, but then think about how we can optimize the runtime bundle for our customer base to then adopt, do the right sizing that I was talking about earlier, that movement. And this slide is really showing, the ratio table where you get, your one core of traditional WebSphere network deployment can actually be redeployed once you've adopted Hybrid Edition, as 8 cores of Liberty Core, so the most lightweight runtime that we have, or 4 cores of WebSphere Liberty or traditional WebSphere, the base, the middle range product. So just through the license flexibility alone, you can kind of you can look at it either as a cost saving because you can kind of right size, but you could actually look at it as unlocking capacity at the same price point. So you grow your capacity by adopting some of these more lightweight runtimes like Liberty. And then when it comes to the cloud, obviously we're fully supportive of OpenShift and containerization, and then the license flexibility that IBM has had traditionally anyway, with the bring your own license model, means that you can take any of our runtimes in containers to the public clouds, whether that's your AWS, your Azure, your Google Cloud, or IBM Cloud, and run them there. They're fully supported there. So the choice of OpenShift, you're right, that's IBM's strategic direction. Some of our customers maybe not embraced that yet. Maybe others are thinking about alternatives. The license flexibility that we have means that it doesn't matter where where you're headed. We'll be able to support you wherever you go. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, one thing that I want to stress is the license flexibility here is incredible. That we've seen customers be able to expand capacity, and no longer does an organization just have to say, I want WAS ND for everything. You can expand capacity and you can save some money and really position yourself well. So, Marie, do we want to move to an audience question at this point, or?
I would love to take some audience questions. So it would be a good breaking point here before we move on to some other solution sets. I know Joe and Jeff wanted to talk about WebSphere automation next. So if you have questions, now would be a great time to put them into your question window, and we can address those. And so there is a question here from Tom, and Tom is asking if you could give some examples, perhaps, about what you're seeing. Tom says, can you give some examples of what you're seeing from other customers who are switching and what the cost savings might be?
So yeah, sure. So in terms of customers and cost savings, so we don't have the details in the slides, which is a bit of an oversight perhaps. But what we tend to see is that like a traditional ND customer who is able to right size their applications maybe can save sort of easily the order of 60% in terms of the footprint that they need when they move from ND in total number of cores footprint down from ND to WebSphere. But then in doing so, they unlock different kind of opportunities in terms of the flexibility to deploy more apps. So the cost saving, there's a whole total economic impact study that we did with one of the analysts that you can find on our website. And that talks about a number of factors that are all about driving cost savings when you adopt Liberty, and then unlocking flexibility that can then grow and allow for additional capacity to be built. But certainly, there's an immediate saving that comes as a consequence of being able to take a TWAS ND standalone license, go through the trade-up process to Hybrid Edition, because in that process, if you're using a particular PVU rated hardware, we just apply a blanket transformation of those PVU licenses to Hybrid Edition. So some processors are rated at like 110 PVUs and others are rated at 70. And we just take the 70 rating as the basis. So if you do a trade up from traditional WebSphere and you're using high rated PVU servers, then you actually immediately get a cost saving because you get a capacity boost when you do that trade up, because we just convert everything at a 70-to-1 ratio. So that little things like that are often overlooked as a mechanism by which you can actually benefit from the license exchange that you can go through. So I mean, I'm not sure I'm doing a great job of giving absolute data points for the question, but I know that there is certainly a complete white paper from one of our analyst partners that is on our website that will give you a lot of details on that.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you. I know it's a tough question to answer, right? Because everybody's going to be different, right? So, I think that probably helps, right? Yeah, it depends. So Tom, thank you for your question. If you need more information on that, let us know. We have another question here from John. Thanks, John. And John says, we use WAS-ND. Does hybrid offer the same high availability?
Yes. So the short answer is yes. The WAS-ND is one of the products inside Hybrid Edition. So I mentioned that Hybrid Edition is a bundle. So you have all editions of WebSphere available in Hybrid Edition. The numbers on the slide here represent the ratios that you can deploy the different editions in. So if you buy 1 core of Hybrid Edition, you can deploy that as 8 cores of Liberty Core or 4 cores of traditional WebSphere base or traditional WebSphere Liberty, WebSphere Liberty on 1 core of WebSphere ND. So you get all of the WebSphere runtimes, and all of the quality of service remains the same for all the WebSphere products. It's Hybrid Edition is just a bundling of those runtimes.
And John says, thank you. So thank you, John, for your question. And thank you, Jeff. Okay, any other questions for right now? And if not, if you think of them as we're moving on, that's fine. Put them in whenever you think of your questions. Just go ahead and put them in. So I think maybe, Joe, you can move to the next area of discussion.
So we're going to switch topics here a little bit. We're going to go to WebSphere automation. And again, Jeff's going to help us out here. And Jeff, it's a new offering from IBM, WebSphere automation. And can you tell us where it fits into the WebSphere portfolio and any challenges that a customer may have and how it helps address those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, maybe it's worth using the one slide we have for this one right away. So first of all, let's think about the WebSphere portfolio as a whole. So we talked at the beginning about some of the key challenges like cost, complexity, and so on, modernization. Complexity is one of those ones that's interesting to deal with, right? So complexity in terms of operational management of a WebSphere estate is something we see a number of our customers dealing with. There's potentially a skills issue. There's potentially just, the volume of work that an operations team has to deal with that's going up. So what WebSphere automation does is it brings automation to the WebSphere estate to help with managing that. And so down the left-hand side of this slide, you can see, we're hitting 3 core use cases. We're looking at security and how to, improve the security posture of a WebSphere estate. We're looking at how we can provide sort of self-healing capabilities and also self-optimizing. So, how do you tune and refine the deployment in real time as a workload is running? So the first one that we've delivered is self-securing, and the goal here is to help what is shown in the middle of this slide, our customers manage their WebSphere estate, whether that's, set of Liberty Core servers, WebSphere base servers, WebSphere ND, whether that's traditional or not. It's how do we provide a common mechanism by which some of those traditional operational tasks can be automated. And so what we have with WebSphere automation is, our first GA was in May this year, and it's focused on helping understand the security posture of a WebSphere estate. And it does that by, inspecting from an external location. So you can run this, on-prem yourself, but basically what you have is a WebSphere automation mini cluster running on OpenShift that you connect to your existing WebSphere install, and it then does an inspection to understand the security position of each of the different servers in the cluster or whatever you have configured, and then it provides a set of reports and tabulates all that data so that you can understand, which servers are potentially at risk from common CVEs, what patch level they're at, and so on. And so, relative to the portfolio, it really complements the existing WebSphere install base because its goal is to simplify and automate a bunch of the tasks that would otherwise be, essentially manual. And provide a degree of reliable, kind of repeatable, automatic management for those tasks.
Okay, great, thank you. Marie, do we want to run another poll here? Here we go. So you should see a poll up, and it'll say, do you use automation to manage security patching of WebSphere? And it's got some selections.
It's one of those
about,
topics that it tends to have, like, I expect everyone, you ask enough people, you get an answer to all of these, but it's quite common that, security patches is something that people are quite not nervous is maybe the wrong word, but there's a certain nervousness about, when there's a security vulnerability and patching it. And so people like to pay very close attention. And so automating it with their own script or conducting it as a manual process is quite common. See that a lot. So that's part of the reason why, WebSphere automation is something that we've focused on, is because we recognize that, manual tasks cost time. And if you can reduce some of that and provide some reliability in it, then that really helps people, operational efficiency is one of those key things we can drive through automation. So
okay, thank you, Jeff. So with WebSphere automation, the official name I believe is IBM WebSphere Automation for Cloud Pak for Watson AI Ops, and that name indicates that it's part of Watson AI Ops. Can you kind of explain the relationship there?
Yeah, so I mean, the name IBM's naming is always awesome, right? So we've got some of the longest names, I think, and WebSphere Automation for Cloud Pak for Watson AI Ops is certainly a mouthful. The point, though, of your question is, explain to me what this means. And so as hopefully many of you are aware, IBM's sort of gone through this pivot towards automation. And so the Watson for AI Ops Cloud Pak is the basis of, a real transformative product when it comes to automation. And our ability to bring AI to bear on operational tasks. What we have with WebSphere automation is sort of a bridge, right, between the old world and the new world. So you have an existing WebSphere estate, and Watson AI Ops is focused on a very sort of future-proof view of the way to optimize workload long into the future from where we are today. What we need to do is find a way of getting to that sort of future state more easily. And so for WebSphere customers, there are some very sort of niche challenges, and security is an example, right, where there's a lot of people doing things manually today, that we can bring some automation to bear for the WebSphere customer, whilst also then introducing some of the capabilities of Watson AI Ops and bridging across to the new world that it represents. And so what you'll progressively see is a combination of WebSphere automation and Watson AI Ops working in unison to provide a really comprehensive view of the full estate, whether that's something brand new that you've just built in a very cloud native style. And Chris is going to talk about some of the tooling that helps sort of see into that in a moment, alongside the existing traditional WebSphere estate, right? And so being able to bridge across that gap and have that common, the right-hand side of the diagram on screen talks about the IBM Automation Foundation and the common platform built on top of OpenShift that we will share with Watson AI Ops. So bringing all these tools together in a single place so that you have a single kind of approach to managing an estate, whether that's a traditional WebSphere estate or something brand new, that commonality and that consistency really helps improve the efficiency of operations teams. And so the role of WebSphere automation is to sort of bridge that gap.
And I mean, just as an example, Jeff, a good example is, we have clients that have been building on a particular target infrastructure for years, and now they want to have flexibility to target multiple new target environments that they want to deploy to. Those could be cloud, they could be private cloud, it could be the Cloud Foundry runtime for migrating off of PCF, for example. And what the automation capabilities in Watson AI Ops are going to provide is that ability to define an application profile one time, you can pull that in from the WAS application profile, then define, suitable, acceptable target environments based on the types of virtual machines that are there, or containers that are there, or other infrastructure. Define that infrastructure, and then kind of use automation scripting to kind of push that out, so that you don't have to kind of guess, am I doing this right? Is this target environment going to support me? And then you'll see kind of additional pieces of automation play out. For example, you'll see kind of automated baselining to make sure that application is operating just as well as it was in the original environment in this new target cloud environment, for example. And it's important that we have that kind of ability to say, yeah, it's going to be just as healthy there, and we'll make sure those resources are managed and really cared for as we, maybe migrate it or make a new deployment model that's hybrid, for example.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff and Chris. Marie, do we have any more questions we want to open for the audience here on WebSphere automation?
Yeah, that would be great. So if anybody has any questions about automation, now would be a great time to ask them. Great, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca has a question, and Rebecca is asking if we could use WebSphere automation to help with the security audit.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes, my short answer is going to be yes again, which is great, right? So what WebSphere automation is able to do is, it's interesting when we talk to our customers, you find out just how much of the world still depends on Microsoft Excel, which is kind of interesting. But when it comes to things like audit, there's often the case to be able to provide, you know, a huge amount of data, and one of the easy ways to do that is in sort of a spreadsheet. So with WebSphere automation, it has the ability to really understand and see all the details of an existing WebSphere estate. When it comes to audit, you can export all of that data into comma separated values, turn it into a spreadsheet, do whatever you need to do that is, you know, part of your embedded process that may well already build on, you know, some of this spreadsheet technology, but capture all of that data and then manage that and process it the way you've been doing so already, maybe for the last however many years. And so, I mean, it's a really simple example, but it shows how, you know, it's important that these tools can fit into the existing processes and practices that an organization has. And that's just one example of how that's easily done with WebSphere automation.
Super, thanks, Jeff. And thank you, Rebecca, for your question. There's another question, let's see, from Brian. So Brian says, does the WebSphere automation install the fix packs and the interim fixes?
So in the current GA release, it doesn't. It's not. We're working on that. So that's, you know, on our roadmap is to go. So what we can do at the moment is the visualization of the estate, understand the patch levels and so on, and it will automatically respond. If you apply a patch, it will recognize that immediately and report on that. What we're doing in the next release and on the roadmap is working on the automation of the actual application of those patches. So watch this space.
Thanks, Jeff. Yep, and thank you, Brian, for your question. Any other questions about automation before we move on to the next little subtopic here? All right, and again, if you have other questions, you know, later, that's okay. You can always put them in. All right, Joe.
All right. Now moving on to Instana, and as you know, people probably know, Instana is a new acquisition for IBM. And Chris, could you tell us, you know, how this fits into the WebSphere customers and why they should be interested in this? And, you know, and we've heard about application performance monitoring in the past from IBM and how this is different or how it's the same.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. So we're really excited. We've actually had two great acquisitions this year in the automation portfolio that really relate directly to application server and WAS. One is Autonomic, who we've actually been working with for over almost 2 years now, reselling as an OEM relationship. So we have a lot of experience with Autonomic in terms of application resource management. That's an important one for us because they've been in the market for 15 years. So it's a great product. Instana is newer in comparison. They're about a 5-year-old company that has focused on a new area of the APM space that's called observability. So if you kind of think back, many of my clients are on their 4th generation of APM now. The first generation was kind of like, hey, is this infrastructure operating properly? Because the applications I run on it, I want to make sure that they're healthy. So this next generation got more into the application metrics, right? It kind of was able to see Java heap, memory, all that good stuff, and give you some metrics and maybe even some proactive alerts. 3rd generation was like really proactive on giving you golden signals and kind of giving you a pretty good perspective of your infrastructure and maybe your VMs or your infrastructure, or your bare metal, and your app servers. And now we're in this 4th generation. And the 4th generation of these technologies is kind of taking all the previous features and functions. So it's giving you that visibility in your infrastructure, tying together, you know, log data with application health, and it's doing it for the gamut of the workloads that you see out there. So the majority of my clients are running still some bare metal with applications directly on it, some VMware, and they're starting to mess around with private clouds and public clouds. So what they need is a single tool that's going to let them observe all of these different facets of their IT estate from an application perspective. And that's important, right? As I said earlier, a lot of teams in the operations world are finally pivoting over to saying, like, I got to look at my business based on applications because my customers interact with applications. Oh, yeah, this is a good slide. My customers interact with applications. And my business cares about, like, at an application stack level, how these things operate. And I no longer can just associate myself with like a data center or, being a cloud person. I need to kind of focus on the fact that maybe my database runs on Z and my middleware is on premise, but my front end is WAS in Amazon. Like, I need to be able to tie all the data across this kind of very hybrid scenario, because my middleware might be on x86 that I get from Dell, my Z systems from IBM, and I've got, an Amazon or an Azure front end. So observability is the perspective that we want to give clients so that they can kind of see from the mobile front end or the web front end, or even if it's still a green screen front end, all the way back, and be able to give you that kind of, heads up display of how all these different applications are working. So, but what I wanted to bring this slide up for is just to kind of put in the minds of the application owners and the app administrators that IT teams are changing too, and they're kind of adopting this application centricity that you all have been doing for years. And in their minds, I think the important pivot points are a lot of tools, too many even. As I said, when you have 4 generations of APMs, and if you're part of a company that maybe has bought other companies, you've inherited other APM choices that others have made. I've got clients who tell me they have 4 or 5 APMs. And so that consolidation is underway right now. And what the view is, if I can consolidate, save money, but bring, more teams onto the same tool, whether they're application developers, operators, site reliability engineers is a new kind of skill set that's coming out. If I can consolidate everyone on a tool and we can communicate better, we're going to find efficiencies. I'm of course going to have cost savings by getting rid of some of the other contracts I have. And I'm just going to be able to get everyone on the same page that much more rapidly. So I can be, what's the last item here, is proactive, right? Everyone wants to kind of be able to tell the management team, I already know about this. I know that there's a ticket. I get it. We've actually been told that this problem existed because I can see every single transaction that's going through this system, whether it's a click on a mobile phone or a mouse click on a website. I know before the spinning ball happens and slowness is occurring because I have a proactive set of tools in my application performance suite that let me know this stuff. So I'm trying to avoid incidents. And I think that's one of the things that we're most excited about, is this kind of way that these teams come together and get to kind of work, especially as the app teams are under so much pressure to, in some cases, modernize, and in most cases, simply just utilize more different types of resources to run, maybe it's cloud, private cloud, et cetera. So this is an interesting intersection, because I think app teams have always been, proactive about wanting to make sure the apps run well. They've always been adopting whatever, is budgeted at least as the cutting edge tool for application performance management. And now you're seeing this catch up from the IT side. And I see it making impacts in just that collaboration and in simplifying the way communications happens, which is for us a great thing, just to kind of remove friction, let's say, in the way that applications are built, they're run, and then they're ultimately managed.
So I'm pretty sure you've answered this question, but if you could just tell specifically about how it's going to help application platform managers, IT operations developers. I know you've already touched on it, but we just got to go back and touch on it.
So and I don't have a specific slide on this, and this is probably what someone was mentioning earlier today, is maybe I should have a slide on this. The benefit of this 4th generation of application performance management, which is kind of called observability, right, is that instead of just getting aggregate data and kind of making general pronunciations like things look healthy, we're now getting second by second granularity of data and we're able to actually collect every single trace. So whereas, in my Gen 2 or Gen 3 APM product, which it probably provides a lot of value, but because it was built using a different technology set, right? It doesn't have streaming analytics. It's kind of tied to an indexed model. Because the new generation in Instana in particular has this kind of flexibility in its ingest model and its flexibility in its data streaming, you as a developer can set up a set of dashboards that are going to give you real-time visibility into every single click stream or transaction and trace that happens in your app. And you're may not going to store every single piece of that data forever, but at least for a week's time, you're going to get a second's granularity, and you're going to get the metrics on every single trace that's out there, so that when someone says, can you find out what this particular user did a couple days ago when we had this problem, a developer no longer has to kind of say, well, no, I'm going to have to rebuild the code, I'm going to have to tag it, I'm going to have to push it, and then maybe we'll hope that that problem happens again. Now what happens is we capture the context of every single transaction at the 1 second granularity. We let the developers be able to see what that click actually interacted with in their code. And we actually in real time can allow you to decompile the code and see the actual line item and see what arguments are being passed in. And as you can tell, it gets very technical from there. But when you have that capability, it lets you say, yeah, we can figure this out much faster. And then it's less, he said, she said, well, the DBA is saying that they're up, but this application server doesn't look very healthy. Now we can all get on the same page much more rapidly. We can actually we can get away from guesses, because our Gen 2 and Gen 3 technology is going to give us more averages, like it looked healthy over this 5-minute period, but over a 5-minute period, app servers can do a lot of weird stuff. And if you use averages, you're going to kind of make it look nicer, right? You're going to miss those peaks and troughs. With 1 second granularity, you're really going to see what's happened with individual trace data. You're going to see what happened on every single user, and now you're going to be able to get those answers more rapidly. And because you can traverse kind of all the way from that infrastructure level up through the application and the transacting code, the actual executed code. Now, I mean, you don't even need to leave the tool to get value from it. And that's why we see folks who have used great, some of the more powerful Gen 3 technology switching. We had a client recently who said, I've got 500 people using a competitive tool, and we feel like that is a massive accomplishment. I mean, these are people both in the ops and the engineering side. They switched to Instana because we have a cost benefit in terms of we have a lower price point, simpler to understand licensing model, no ingest fees, et cetera, no user fees. And they now have over 700 people using Instana, and the kind of teams have expanded into the site reliability engineering team, which is important to get on board in this kind of push for quality. As well as a lot of business owners are using it because its dashboards are so easy to use. I mean, I'm not a technical person, and I can do the Instana demo. It's quite nice. So big changes from the past, and it really impacts multiple sets of teams, I think, which is, again, exciting for us. I know we're getting late, but I'd love to know if anyone is adopting this stuff. It would be interesting to hear.
Another poll question. We're moving on to poll question. Are you adopting site reliability engineering or moving towards application-centric
Let's see. A few of you
teams?
said yes. You're doing site reliability and engineering. Some of you are saying no, you're doing something else, and the majority of you saying you're just not sure. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we see in kind of the more, the folks who are kind of born on the cloud definitely go this route first. But we've had some amazing engagements with teams who are, using mono to micro for the first time to really understand how can I take this existing TWAS app and then kind of break it down into components that may be more manageable. And the cool thing in that case is an app that they used to have to spend hours every week making sure I have my APM code in there. Now, because of the automation offered inside of Instana, as soon as that application is kind of decomposed and then pushed to a target server, they might be running in containers or Docker for the first time. Because Instana doesn't need any coding, literally, if it's on the host that the application runs on, it will just see that Java application and start spitting back data. So whereas before the team was spending 2 hours, 4 hours a week instrumenting and making sure they're getting the right code in the right places, no work. So that's an exciting thing as people start adopting containers is I thought it was going to be more complex, but in some ways, I actually have better visibility into my code, more granular understanding of how it's operating, and I can service my customers better because I can see like this click causes this problem. Feed that data right into my ticketing system from the tool, and start addressing issues like that in a much more proactive fashion. There's one more slide I think that would be good just to contextualize.
Yep. And before we go there, just a quick comment. So Ryan, thanks Ryan. Ryan says that regarding our poll, his organization's becoming more familiar, but feels much further down the road. So thanks Ryan for weighing in on that. And we also have just another question I just want to make sure I get out here from Naresh, who is asking if you can elaborate. Someone must have used the word heal. Can you please elaborate on heal and any example?
Like healing code?
And that might have, yeah. I think so. And Naresh, if that's not the right content, let us know. But I think that's what you were referring to.
So I mean, I have an example. I don't know if Jeff wants to take that. I think the closest we get to being autonomic and self-healing is really around making sure that your code runs in the right footprint. So I will say, and this is kind of outside of the Instana swim lane. So Jeff, again, if it's something you want to cover, let me know. The closest thing that we have towards an autonomic operations capability is going to be Turbonomic. And what the Turbonomic is going to do is it's going to take the data from any APM tool. So even traditional Gen 1, 2, 3 APM tool, it's going to get that data and it's going to help you kind of baseline the health of the application in context of the infrastructure that it's running on. And it's going to make proactive recommendations to you. Now, Turbonomic can also plug into your Git tools or your kind of other IT operations tools like Ansible, and let Ansible then make changes to that infrastructure. Or Turbonomic can actually do the webhooks and make the changes for you. So in that sense, it's not going to heal your code, but it's going to maybe beef up the infrastructure underneath it to make sure that it runs well and needs to auto scale. Or another example is it'll shrink it back down if it's over provisioned and help save you money if your applications kind of were, I think it needs about this many VMs and I think they need to be sized like this. Well, Turbo will tell you what the optimal size is for that workload. And in that sense, if you turn on the autonomic components of Turbo, which not everyone does, because we get it. Sometimes it's weird to have robots make decisions for you. It'll actually kind of self-resize and it could make even thousands of choices for you a month. We definitely have clients using it to manage 60,000 VMs of different organizations.
So I was just going to add a couple of comments from a WebSphere automation perspective. Thanks, Chris. From a healing perspective, healing is on our backlog, right? It's on the roadmap as one of the target areas that we know that we've got a lot of feedback from customers that they'd like help in understanding applications and when applications present some kind of fault, how do you kind of resolve it? And an example is memory leaks, right? Now, what we're actually doing is looking closely at what Chris has just been talking about, what Instana can see into like a Java process, and that could be a WebSphere, traditional WebSphere or a Liberty process, combining that with some of the things we can do with WebSphere itself, because we obviously have a lot of detailed understanding of the internals of WebSphere, and pulling those two kind of bits of data together to be able to identify memory leaks faster, maybe even predict or sort of prevent memory leaks from having a negative impact. So that's an item on the roadmap, but not something that's currently available in the product. So certainly, again, it's watch this space. We've just got it out the door. So, teams working hard to add capabilities. And that healing is definitely on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of show in context where these kind of capabilities fit together. So within this automation base capability, we looked at we look at kind of building some building block capabilities. So collection and observation, making sure you're getting the logs and keeping them around in a flexible fashion so you can really rapidly, go back in time or without re-indexing them. Same thing with your metrics, right? So using an observability platform to get the application metrics and make sure that they're flexibly available to the app teams that need them. That's kind of your blocking and tackling, right? A lot of organizations are rationalizing tools to be able to have these capabilities now. In the middle is where you'd think of a tool like Autonomic or an Ansible, a CloudForms, this idea of like taking automated steps for optimization and for kind of doing automated ops. And then, upper right is going to be a capability suite that's known as AI ops, right? This is where we are exploiting 6 or 7 kind of IT data types. It could be tickets, it could be change logs. It's definitely metrics, events, log data in real time, both from the systems and from the applications. That's where we're doing correlation against all these different data types to really help you avoid incidents. And it's definitely kind of in the hierarchy, a more sophisticated approach that clients are starting to adopt right now, AI ops. But if you think about this journey, IBM through Autonomic, through our Cloud Pak for Watson AI ops, our multi-cloud management features, of course, WebSphere Hybrid Edition and WebSphere Automation, we fill in so many of these gaps so we can go with a client at the beginning of this journey, help them kind of begin it, or for clients who are really sophisticated and already doing, event grouping and event analytics, we can kind of augment those more sophisticated techniques to really bring them better business value. And in a lot of cases, consolidation of licenses and removing of technical tools that kind of are, maybe from previous generations.
Windows quiet at the moment, so I think you can probably continue.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all the customers that have attended. Thank you. We know it's a complicated journey when you modernize WebSphere. If you have any questions at all around WebSphere, your modernization journey, or any product related questions around licensing, please feel free to reach out to us. Probably the best way is to contact your mainline account executive, or you can contact me directly, and or for that matter, anyone else on the mainline team, and I'm sure we'll be able to get to the right person and help you out. But thank you for your time today, and again, thank you to all the presenters, and thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you all. We appreciate it. Thanks for all the attendees, and we will be tallying it up. Who was the most engaged and getting? We'll be getting emails out to you. Christina will do that to get an address where we can mail your very sought after mainline Learning with Lattes mug. So look forward to seeing you all again on our next broadcast. Thanks.